Hello, intermediate double basses, and welcome to this, the sixth and final tutorial for the Virtual Benedetti sessions. I can't quite believe it's the sixth one, and I can't quite believe it's almost all over. It's been this amazing 3 weeks of fun and music making and a great journey together. As always, I will remind you that there are 5 other tutorials before this one where we talk about all 3 of the pieces of music we've been working on. We go into detail about certain sections and certain techniques, and the advice in there isn't just for the music we've been working on. There's a lot of stuff that applies to the rest of your musical career, so make sure you go back and watch them. We also have our warm-up videos, and again, I'll really try and stress it to you as bass players. It's super important that we look after our bodies, because we do have to work so hard and in such a physical way. So I don't know about you, but the last 3 weeks have flown past for me. We've had, including this, our 6 tutorials. We've had 2 Zoom sessions, live double bass sectionals, which were an amazing sort of experience for me, and I hope was good for you guys as well. Our Zoom session that's coming on Friday, we thought it would be really nice to sort of have a kind of double bass sort of surgery where you guys can bring questions, can bring pieces of music you've been working on you want to ask us about. Alice will be there, Rebecca, our incredible double bass ambassador, will be there as well. So make sure you're preparing some questions, think of some things to ask us. We are here, and you can mine the gold in our brains, our little bits of advice and little tips and things that we've learned in our experience, and we are more than willing. In fact, we are like dying to let you know that information. So please think of some questions, think of some things you've always wanted to ask bass players, and we'll hopefully try and answer them as best as we can. I also just want to say thank you to you guys for all of your hard work. We're in this bizarre new world of virtual online teaching and music making and music learning, and it's been really hard work for me, but it's also been super hard work for you, and your commitment has been amazing, and I really just wanted to say thank you for that. I was really worried that one of my favourite things about teaching and about learning with people is that connection you have with each other and sort of discovering things about each other, and I was worried that we wouldn't have that over this kind of virtual platform. But I have to be honest, and I have felt a real connection, and I've really enjoyed the double bass. The Zoom sectionals were great, getting to see you all on the screen. I've loved watching your recordings that you sent in and videos. It's been a real pleasure watching them and going through them as well. And just the amount of hard work you've put in is really, really quite humbling for me, and I've loved being there with you on that journey. And I hope the advice that I've given and these tutorials and in this sectional, I hope some of that has resonated with you and has stayed with you and helped you on your journey with the double bass. This tutorial will be a little bit different in that in the first 5 tutorials we sort of delved in quite a lot of detail to the music and talked a lot about those pieces. You guys have already sent your recordings in, and I know we're working towards the concert on Sunday, so we'll spend a little bit of time looking at Vaughan Williams and a couple of the things I haven't spoken about. But I also, in this tutorial, I'm going to try and share with you some of the knowledge and some advice that I've learned over my experience as a musician and as a bass player in particular. Whenever I'm working as a teacher and learning with new people, I always try and think of the things that I wish I'd known earlier in my musical career or when I was a little person. And so I'm going to share with you some information, some ideas that I think are really useful to know and can be really useful to think about as a bass player. Before we do that, as I said, we'd like to take a little look at the Vaughan Williams. So if you get your music and your bass and your bow, and we'll just go over a few more things to finish up with that piece. So guys, what I thought would be most useful just for this last tutorial with the Vaughan Williams in mind is to go through the piece. We've gone through quite a lot of it in detail, but just to go through it with a quick kind of whistle-stop tour of each bit and talk about what's important to remember, what's important to think about when we're playing that particular part. And we'll start right at the beginning, as is a good place to start always. So at the beginning we have this pianissimo molto sostenuto, so always sustained sound, but pianissimo, look really, really quiet. And we talked about that, maybe bringing the bow a little bit up towards the fingerboard, making sure we've got a good strong left hand. So think about it being pianissimo with the right hand, but forte with the left hand, so we get a beautiful sound. And then that really kind of just really distant kind of sound that drifts off into nothing. We then move on to pizzicato, so piano molto pesante, then piano pesante just before A. So this pesante means heavy, but again, I don't think it means, you know, thudding. Thinking about making these pizzicatos really held back, making them soft and not too direct. So trying to yet get the kind of flesh of the finger involved in playing them. So they're not too punchy, they're nice and round and warm. And the same as we move into bar 15 onwards, and we have the pizzicato there as well. Make sure that we're moving with the dynamics and that we're following the line of the music. Remember, I'll stress that again. It's so important as bass players that we are more musical than ever and that we push and strive to shape our music and phrase our music really beautifully, because it's harder for other instruments to hear us doing that. The pizzicato continue at letter B, and we also meet our first encounter with our switch between compound time and simple time when we're playing in the fourth bar. So making sure if I go from the third bar of B that we're happy with that change in the feeling and the beat of the music. So from the third bar of B it would be 1 and 2 and 3 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1 and 2 and 3 and. So those subdivisions really helping us here, and the same for the next line as well. And again, I've already said it, but I will stress that point of being ultra musical, making sure we're phrasing our music and moving in the direction of the music. A lot of the time in this piece, we're moving as a whole with the orchestra, so the dynamics and the kind of musical swells and the phrasing will be the whole ensemble. So being ultra aware of that and really listening and having open ears. Letter C was a place that we spent quite a lot of time on in the last two tutorials. Just a quick recap, we talked about having a really good point of contact with the strings so that we could have that sustained appassionato sound. We talked about our dynamics. We also talked about maybe using second position if you're a bit more comfortable with that, but obviously half position being totally fine. And we also talked about our bow speed. We talked about these treacle bows. We talked about making sure that on the 3-beat notes that come in the fourth bar and the 8th bar, that we are really, you know, slowing the speed of the bow down, like moving through treacle, so that enables us to get that sound and that big crescendo as well. Letter D sees us moving back into the compound time, the 6/8 with our bow, but again keeping our subdivisions ticking over always, so changing to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1 and 2 and 3 and that will allow us to keep a good handle on the rhythm and also allow us to stay in time with the beat, with the conductor and with, you know, the rest of the ensemble. And as we move through to the end, through to letter E, I talked about this in the last tutorial, about this disappearing sound, this so thinking about our bow travelling from the bridge up towards the fingerboard as we diminuendo, and that sound really drifting off into nowhere. So up towards the fingerboard and really taking all the way out and managing to finish in this upper half so that the sound just drifts off into nothing. So that was quite a quick recap of the Vaughan Williams. In the previous tutorials I go into a lot more detail in the sections, but I just wanted to sort of go through it and talk through everything, always thinking about the sound, the dynamics, those subdivisions, so that it helps us with the slow tempo. And then, especially towards the end of the letter C, really thinking about our bow and having good control, knowing exactly the speed we need, the weight, the point of contact to keep that sustained sound, and then drifting off at the end at letter E, we really just sort of have to magically disappear. As I said at the start, the second part of this tutorial will be me going through some bits of advice and some things that I've learned over the years that I think are important to share with you guys. And the first one is kind of two wrapped into one, but I'll explain that a little bit more in more detail. But the first thing, and the way I always like to think of this, one of my favourite wrestlers growing up used to have this saying, which was know your role. And I don't mean breakfast roll, although they are delicious, but R-O-L-E rather than R-O-L-L. And this knowing your role, and it's really super important for bass players, this, so knowing what it is that you're doing and what it is you're providing in that musical setting. Now, basses, we're quite a strange breed because we often have quite a few responsibilities going at once. And so if you think of, because we play a lot of the time, we're playing root notes, we're really providing and painting the harmony, and we're providing people's kind of first point of contact with harmony is often that low root bass note. But we're also used a huge amount of the time for rhythmic responsibility and used in quite a percussive way. And this awareness of what it is we're doing and what it is we're providing is so important. And now, don't get me wrong, every musician has this, and every musician should know exactly what their part is doing and what it's for and what it's providing. But for bass players, it's super important because we often have, as I said, that dual responsibility, and we do provide such a foundation for the music. And don't let anyone tell you anything differently, because that is really what it's all about. You know, being a bass player, we are providing the foundation. Now, that doesn't mean we don't get the melody sometimes we do, and again, when we do, we need to know that we have the melody, and knowing your role there is super important. And as I said, it kind of ties into two bits of advice. So there's knowing your role, and then going beyond the bass part. And for me, the bass players that I've met that are ones that I really look up to, the ones that I'm always super impressed with and have made a real impression on me, are the ones that do know their role, but they also go beyond the bass part and really sort of explore what else is going on in the musical setting. Now, I must stress, this isn't just in an orchestra. This is in any musical setting. You know, it could be jazz quintet, it could be a folk group, it could be, I don't know, you sometimes get double bass and marching bands, you know, it could be like that. So it's knowing this sort of, knowing your role on one side, but also going beyond that bass part that we have in front of us and understanding what else is happening and what else we're affecting and what else that we are supporting in the music. My second tip links in to the end of the first tip, and it is to always be open and be curious. Now, just before the virtual Benedetti sessions on the Benedetti Foundation page, I did a live session that was about being a musical chameleon. And in that session, I talked about how chameleons have 360-degree vision. And I said that as musicians, we sort of have to have this 360-degree vision that allows us to absorb as much as we can musically. And that means going to music events that are new, that we've never experienced, you know, going and trying different genres of music that we've not tried before. It can be really nerve-wracking going to a course or going to a weekend of workshops, but being open to those experiences is really important for our development, and trying to get past those nerves, which is not easy. I'm not trying to say that is easy, but if we can get past those nerves and go and have these experiences and be open, then it can help us learn so much in the long run and absorb so much from other musicians and other experiences. And the second part, this idea of being curious, it's something I wish I had followed a little bit more as a young musician. You know, if I heard something I liked, you know, I would just think, oh, I like that. And that's fine, but what I wish I had done and what I implore you guys to do is, if you hear something you like, be curious about it and go and find out what it is and how it works. So, for example, you might hear a harmony that you like or a melody that you like, and it's great to be like, oh, I like that. But take that next step and think, oh, why do I like that? You know, go and find, if it's a melody, put it on your instrument, put it on your bass and play it. Work out what the notes are, work out what you like about it. And in that sense, you've taken this extra little step, which has added it to your musical bow, pun absolutely intended. That being curious also applies to your lessons. You know, if you hear something like a genre of music that you like, that you've maybe not got so much experience in, then your teachers will love if you come to them and say, oh, I heard this music the other day, you know, are there any pieces we could play that, you know, are in that style? Or do you have any recordings that you recommend that I listen to? Or are there any famous musicians in that style or that genre that I should listen to? And your teachers will love that curiosity and they will feed that curiosity. And often what tends to happen, if you show a bit of curiosity in one area, your teacher will push back with even more to feed it, and you will find it as kind of this ever-growing process where you will just keep learning and keep adding to your own musicianship, which is absolutely beautiful and a really, really good thing to do. The third thing I want to talk about is a bit more practical, a bit more to do with our instrument. It's a phrase I really like, and it's this idea of unlocking your instrument. So for us, that's essentially unlocking the fingerboard, and this idea of making sure there's no areas on your instrument that are no-go areas for you. And now this is a constant process, and it's also a constant process that doesn't really have a finish line. You know, it's one of these processes that you work for throughout your whole musical life. I'm still constantly doing it, and as young players, you know, you're starting your progression, you're starting to explore more down the fingerboard, and you're starting to play pieces with technical challenges that you start exploring new areas. And it's so important when you start to work in these new areas, no matter what it is, if it's third position or fourth position or thumb position, that you spend the time to get to know that position really well and to really understand what notes you have available to you and where those notes live in that position and in relation to when you shift into another position. Along with that technical work and unlocking of your instrument, is something I'm going to mention now that's probably, if I had a musical time machine, then I would go back to school, and this is the thing I would work on the most and the thing I would want to add the most to my musicianship, and it is using your ears. So that oral side of music, that hearing a melody and singing it back, hearing a melody and playing it back, you know, on your instrument or on a different instrument, and it's such a key side of music. All of my favourite musicians on the planet that I like to listen to and that I love to play with, they have all spent so much time unlocking their instrument and training their ears. That's this term ear training. And it is something that you can learn and practice. And whether it's recognising a different interval or recognising a type of chord or playing a melody in one key in your instrument and working it out in another key, all of these things are teaching our musical brain, teaching our ears. And as we do that and combine that ear training with unlocking our instrument, we are then achieving this level of even musicianship, the practical side along with the oral side. And when these two sides rise and, you know, get stronger, like I said, it gives our brain time to really focus in on that kind of indescribable bit, the character of the music, the emotion of the music. It allows us, our hands and our ears will take care of the practical side of things when we spend work on them, but then that allows our brain to really focus in on that special part of music, that indescribable bit, you know, the untouchable bit, whether it's a certain emotion or a certain feeling, whether it's a story you're trying to tell or a certain character. If we have this unlocked instrument and we have unlocked ears and really well-trained ears, then that allows us to focus in on being the best musician that we can be. The next bit of advice follows on from the previous one, and it's about practice. And the key message is really you need to learn how to practice and learn how to make practice work for you. Everyone on the planet's different. Every musician has a different way of practicing that works for them. And it's hard, but you've got to discover what works best for you. You've got to find the amount of time that's key for you. It might be, you know, 10 minutes, it might be 20 minutes, but discover like the length of period that you can really concentrate, you can focus and do some of your best work. It is quality over quantity as always. But if you're not sure about how to practice something, ask your teacher, because they will have strategies for you, they'll have techniques, and they'll talk you through those techniques and enable you to work on the music in an effective way. Also, structure your practice. Write down what you're going to do. That always helps, no matter what type of practicer you are. It can really help to kind of write down a list. You know, it might just be 1 minute warm up, and then the type of warm up you're going to do. You're going to do 2 minutes of scales after that, and then I'm going to do 3 minutes of ear training. And if you structure your practice like that and write it down like that, you're going to get into a nice routine. You're going to learn what works for you, what doesn't work for you. And that way you can build your practice into a more effective routine for you. The last bit of advice I want to talk about is about sound. And now your sound is your musical identity. It's the key to everything. There are millions of musicians on the planet, but there are a select few that when you hear a recording, you know instantly. And that's an amazing thing when you think about it. You don't see them, but when you hear their musical sound, you can instantly go, oh, that's such and such, or that's so and so. And that is an incredible thing. And this idea of working on your sound is about working on your own musical identity. Now, we are bass players, we are string players, so a huge amount of our sound comes from our bow. And one of the best pieces of advice I ever got is from a very famous and incredible bass player called Bojo Paradžić. He's a Croatian bass player, and he said to me, Stuart, 98% of the music comes from your right hand. And I know I was talking about unlocking your instrument, and that is really important, you know, learning the notes, learning the fingerboard. But that is the easier side of the instrument, and it is actually learning to make the sound you want and saying what you want to say. That all happens with the right hand. And to give you some perspective, I'm not saying you need to do this, but Bojo, when he was at music college, he told me he used to spend 6 hours, when he was in his first year, he'd spend 6 hours a day doing open string exercises with his bow. So whether that was, you know, smooth bow changes or different bow strokes, he spent all this time getting to know and making his bow his best friend. And you do need to know your bow like your best friend. If you think about your best friend, you know everything about them. You know what makes them laugh, you know what makes them upset, you know what they like, you know what they don't like. And that's what you've got to know about your bow. You've got to know how things work at the heel, how do things work at the tip, you know, how do things work when I'm changing to pizzicato, and really spend the time getting to know your bow, whether it's French or German bow. Both are great, both are excellent. I use both, it's fantastic. So don't worry about using one or the other, but make your bow your best friend. And if you do that, you can start to understand how your sound works, how you can change your sound, how you can make different sounds for different characters, different sounds for different emotions. And as I've already said in previous tutorials, the same goes for pizzicato. Experiment with your sound. Find where you get a nice earthy sound. Find where you get a thin sound. Find where you get a direct sound. Experiment all over with pizzicato and with the bow. You need to get to know your instrument, and every instrument is different. But get to know your instrument and the different sounds it can make and how you make those sounds. And as you do that and you have all these different musical colours at your fingertips, you'll find different occasions when you think, oh, I want this sound, or oh, I wonder if they'd like this sound here. And that is such a great thing about being a musician, is you can offer all these different colours and all these different sounds and affect the music in a really great way. So that brings us to the end of our final tutorial. I hope some of that advice was useful. Obviously everyone's different, and some bits of advice will ring true with some people and not with others, and it's important. Again, a great thing about being a musician is finding what works for you and finding how best to make music work for you as well. I'm very sad this is the end, our last tutorial. We have our live bass surgery on Friday, so make sure you come to that with myself and Alice. Make sure you dress up as well. We love fancy dress, so really go for it. And thinking about all those bass questions you want to ask. Maybe your parents have some questions. It could be about a certain piece of music, it could be about a practical thing with your instrument, but bring those questions along and we'll do our best to answer them. We'll also have some funny stories and things about life as bass players. I also want to remind you, we still love to get some of your social media stuff. So, you know, even if you're still working away, still practicing, send them in. You know, hashtag Benedetti Sessions, hashtag practicing with Stuart, hashtag, you know, bass life, all the hashtags, get them in, because I've really loved seeing those little clips over the last couple of weeks. I guess all that's left, as I did at the start, I just wanted to say thank you. It's been an incredible 3 weeks. I've had such fun making these videos. I've had such fun doing the live bass sectionals. And like I said, I want to say thank you for all your hard work. Thank you so much for your commitment. Thank you so much for your amazing music making. It's just been an absolute pleasure for me. Thank you for putting up with my rambling in these videos, for my craziness in live double bass sectionals. I cannot wait for the day when we can have a proper Benedetti sessions and we will be together and in the same room and learning together, and that for me is like the real magic of it, and it's a thing that I really love doing. And yeah, thank you, because it's been an absolute honour and a privilege for me to work with you, and I've loved seeing your progress in the sectionals. I can actually see you all on my screen, and I've loved that because I could spy on you all and how great you're doing in your bass playing. So yeah, I will see you all on Friday for the surgery, and then we have the big concert on Sunday as well. So I hope you have a good rest of your week. thank you again for the last 3 weeks. And yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. Bye bye.